think our main frustration is just the frequency or lack of frequency of the train.
It's a bit of a lottery sometimes whether I'm going to arrive where I want to at the time I want to.
It's not just about speed, it's not just about frequency, it's also about size of carriages, it's about all of them really. And I think we need a much more reactive network to be able to adapt to large-scale events.
At certain times of the day it can be quite hard to get on a train because they're full and standing and you just can't physically get on.
It's quite frustrating because, you want to come in at a certain time, so I do come quite late or I'm just not turning up, and it does affect school and work and grades and stuff.
We rely on visitors every day coming to the gallery, and if they can't get here then that's obviously a huge problem for us.
There's one train an hour from York. What we find is that quite a lot of our audiences, if they come in by train, we see them leaving the show before the end.
Last year was the first year of Crosswires Festival, and even though it was the first year, 45% of the tickets were sold outside Sheffield and actually outside South Yorkshire. And when city centres are encouraging people to not bring cars into the centre and we're trying to encourage public transport use, the importance of trains is huge.
We've got people based all over the north of England. We're relying on the trains to move us between our offices, to get to meetings, to get to events, and so it's really important for us to be able to have confidence when people are getting on the train.
I'm actually sight impaired, so I can't drive, so to me public transport is my biggest way of getting around. So to have a service that would be every half hour or with more capacity, I'd be able to go to the station with confidence knowing that I'm going to get on a train and I can get some.
Thanks so much. Well, thank you all for coming today, and what brilliant officers. Thank you so much, Arab, for hosting us. And also an opportunity for me to deliver this incredible piece of work with our fellow mayors and, of course, David Blunkett. It's been so wonderful to have David on board, and what an incredible advocate for Yorkshire and a true public servant. People up and down God's own country will owe him a huge debt of gratitude when we've delivered this transformational package of improvements for our railways. Today is absolutely about collaboration between neighbours where borders from one area to another really don't matter to passengers. It's not competition. We have to rule out national funding decisions for far too long. We have been cut out of that picture. There's so many reasons why I love this amazing city and, of course, our beautiful West Yorkshire, but the railway network is not one of them. How can Leeds, the UK's third largest city, have a rail station so congested that it's by far the worst location across the UK in terms of total minutes delay? Problems start here and simply ripple across the rest of the north and the entire country. Behind that statistic, we all know there are stories of human misery, from constantly being late to work, missed hospital appointments, not being able to attend those family gatherings, skipping meetings with friends, so much of those important life's moments. In what world is it okay for Bradford, given the size of its population and economy, to be the only northern city not on a main line to London or directly connected to fast cross-Pennine routes? How can it have been faster for Edwardians to travel from Bradford towards Leeds than it is today? Now, I spend an awful lot of my time on trains, so I have a front row seat, or shall we say, a crowded spot, often outside the loo, to the dysfunctional state of our rail network. Old, dirty, slow, infrequent and overcrowded trains with few proper facilities. No wonder it's so hard to get people out of their cars and onto trains and public transport. Instead of HS2, we got a long list of vague and empty promises in Network North. Now, there's a huge amount of brilliant people and great work taking place across the rail industry. But here in Yorkshire, it's operating not with one, but with both hands tied behind our back. The transformational benefits stemming from both the Trans-Pennine route upgrade and Midland mainline electrification will only be felt if we get the investment that David's report has set out. Because if we didn't, all we're going to do is shift the problem from one end of the line to the other. Fixing our broken railways will help us create more jobs, unlock opportunities and build more homes, closing that productivity gap, putting more money into people's pockets. Now, earlier this week, here in West Yorkshire, we launched our new transport brand, the Weaver Network, and we have been promising the public that integrated and seamless travel across West Yorkshire. Buses will start to move under public control, and we're bringing trams back to West Yorkshire with spades in the ground by 2028. However, I cannot fulfil that promise if we don't have a fit-for-purpose rail network to back it up. It is time to back Yorkshire. So thank you for coming to West Yorkshire today. I hope you enjoyed the rest of the event. And I'd like to now invite our proud friend, Yorkshireman to his core, experience of working at the heart of government, and an invaluable asset to the Yorkshire Plan for Rail, David Blunkett. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you to all of you for being here. It's been quite a roller coaster over the last 10 weeks. I was privileged to be asked by the 3 elected mayors to take on the task of coordinating, of driving forward the report in what has to have been record time, because of course we're aiming for the spending review and the 10-year infrastructure plan, which are both going to be announced in June. And I thought, where the hell do we start? Well, the first thing was the White Rose Agreement. And I see this rail plan, this infrastructure connectivity plan, as the beginning of that White Rose journey, where people will actually be collaborating across the whole of Yorkshire, building where we can the cooperation to make investment work better, linking not only, as we are doing today, the connectivity of people travelling, but also our universities, our civil service hubs within Yorkshire. I've said before, but I'll say it again this morning, we have been punching way under our weight east of the Pennines. We have a population just over that of Scotland. We have the second and we have the third and fourth largest cities in England. And if you take the match of the largest cities in Scotland, Glasgow and Edinburgh, which compare to Leeds and Sheffield almost exactly in population, the number of travel journeys between those two cities each year is 1.2 million. Between Sheffield and Leeds, it's 320,000. And I found out why this morning, because getting the train from Sheffield to Leeds was quite an experience. We were on the fast train, which was 26 minutes late getting in, 6 of them standing outside Leeds station, which emphasises entirely the absolute imperative of getting right the investment, not only in the infrastructure generally, and that includes signalling, but also in reconfiguring the stations here in Leeds, in Sheffield, York, building rail station fit for its name in Rotherham, and connecting all of that with faster, more reliable, more comfortable rolling stock. It's a massive ask, but it's a realistic one. We haven't gone for the kind of outrageous requests from government that can't be met. We've asked government over a period ahead of £14 billion, also matched by what is being put in locally, including the £2.5 billion that's going into the West Yorkshire transit system and the expansion of the tram in Sheffield and South Yorkshire. I'm very pleased that along with the elected mayors, we have the leader of Sheffield City Council, Tom Hunt, with us this morning. This is going to be a venture where every element of both our democratic input, our industrial and business investment, and our rail infrastructure are going to make a transformation of our region. And it can be done and it must be done. So we had the privilege, after the White Rose Agreement was signed, of talking with the Transport Minister, Heidi Alexander, and Peter Hendy, who is an expert in rail, who's now the Rail Minister, when they came to York on the 10th of January. By then, we'd produced a draft report. I pay tribute to the staff of all 3 of the elected mayors who have really, really put in a shift to make this possible, and to then sophisticate the document and the liaison with the Department of Transport and the Treasury, so that we have a hearing in Westminster and Whitehall where it really matters. And if we can get this right, then that connectivity will be transformational in regeneration and growth. We estimate that over a 10-year period, we could be investing in an additional 210,000 houses, which will be crucial to the government's targets over the years ahead, that it would generate at least 83,000 new jobs, both inside and outside the investment in connectivity, and that it will enable people to commute, to be able to go to leisure, to pleasure, to sporting events, although I won't be coming to Leeds in the next season on this occasion, maybe in the future. It's about every aspect of our lives. So it's about getting to work, being able to get to entertainment and leisure, being able to see our friends and family. And the individual mayors, as Tracy Brabin has already just spelt out from the West Yorkshire angle, is going to be true of South and York and North Yorkshire. So with my thanks, and it was a privilege, it's not always been a pleasure over the last 10 weeks, but it's been a privilege. With my thanks to the enormous effort of the staff and for the invitation of the mayors, recognising that this is the first step in a much bigger journey, literally, then we can do it together. But it will take everybody putting their shoulder to the wheel, and it will need central government backing in on the initiative and enterprise of people here in Yorkshire. It's my pleasure to hand over to the elected Mayor of York and North Yorkshire, David Skaith. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, David, and thank you for all your hard work that you've done over the last 10 weeks or so. I've seen some of the emails been coming through at 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday, so this man works hard. And, So we've obviously set out our huge ambition for our region here. The working together of York and North Yorkshire, South and West Yorkshire, along with our office and our team who have been involved in a huge amount of work over the last 10 weeks, has been incredible to showcase where we've come from and where we're going to. And it really emphasises the need, the requirement of that investment into rail, into our region. So far, you know, we have an opportunity now to really take this moment and really put that spotlight, particularly on York and North Yorkshire, which for a long time has been severely left behind, particularly on transport. And now we have an opportunity to show that to government, to really put that spotlight on our region, say that we cannot be left behind any longer. Improving services between Sheffield, Leeds and York and onwards, particularly onto the coast for us in particular, and those market towns of North Yorkshire, will create those corridors that we often talk about, those corridors of skills, those opportunities, as already been touched as well, those corridors to develop new housing and new growth for businesses. That is absolutely key for our region, and transport and rail underpins all that work. In York and North Yorkshire, we often talk about really fixing the foundations which have been broken for so long, and transport, again, is the real key and the real start of all that work. So I thank you once again to everyone who's been involved in that, to really help us fix those foundations and get us moving forward, because without this collective work, without collective mayors coming together to speak on the whole of Yorkshire and getting that message to government, that's how we will get there, and long may that continue on this working relationship. Improving our connectivity along the York and Scarborough corridor in particular, and building that new station that we'd love to see at Haxby, improving the existing stations at Moulton and Seamer, creating that corridor of growth, unlocking that housing potential there as well. That really is our key. If we look on the map regularly, if you look at our region, it is big. I don't need to tell everyone in this room, North Yorkshire is a very big place, and a lot of time it feels very disconnected. How we make our place feel smaller, which is by improving that connectivity and make people be able to travel around our region much more efficiently, is key to everything. Increasing the capacity, particularly at York Station, huge bottlenecks at North Allerton, which will have a huge impact on heading northeast into Darlington, Durham and Newcastle. Again, thinking outside of our borders, I think a really strong piece of what we're talking about Yorkshire. Yes, we're putting Yorkshire on the map, but we understand so much of our transport connectivity is outside and coming in as well. And that's how we will be thinking and working going forward as well. So together with Lord Blunkett, we have set out our plan that will get residents where they need to go and unlock that huge potential right across our White Rose Agreement. We don't need to tell everyone in this room that Yorkshire is the best place to be. More people want to be here, more people want to stay here, but we have to create the environment where people can do that. And it all starts with transport, all starts with rail. The more we can do that, the more we can improve that, the better our region is going to be for everyone here who wants to stay here, grow it and come here. So thank you very much, and I'll hand over to my fellow South Yorkshire Mayor, Oliver Coppard.
Morning, everyone. And thank you, David. and Tracy and David, and particularly thank you to David Blunkett, Lord David Blunkett, Sheffield's own Lord David Blunkett, and actually Barney for the work that's gone into this report, which I think is an absolutely vital report looking at what we need here in Yorkshire. But I just want to start by touching on what David already mentioned, which is about that personal experience on the railways, because this morning, as David already said, we came here by train, as you would expect, and the train was delayed, as also you might sometimes expect, particularly between Leeds and Sheffield, where the connections are simply not good enough for two cities the size of our two. And I was on the platform, a lady stopped me and said, "Aren't you the mayor?" And I said, "Yes." And she was with her mum, and her mum had a walker. She was quite severely disabled, it seemed. And she was angry. She was angry enough on the platform because the train was delayed. And then when we got on the train, and it was standing room only, and her mum couldn't really stand, she was even more angry. And I fully understand that anger, and she isn't the only one. Because for people like her, for people like us, for people right across our communities, that is their day-to-day experience of the railways. Overcrowded, not on time, not getting them where they need to be when they need to be there. And that isn't through lack of effort or will, that is through a lack of investment into our railways, certainly over the last 14 years. And we're now coming together as the three mayors of Yorkshire with David's support to say enough is enough. Enough is enough. We need to move this forward, and we need that investment into our railways, quite honestly into our communities, so that we can unlock the potential, the huge potential that we have across this place that we call home. And that's why this work is so important. We've already done and are already doing what we can locally, not just in South Yorkshire, where we've taken the tram back under public control for the first time in 27 years, and as a result we see fare evasion down by 90%, we see revenues up by at least 5%, we see investment in the millions going in because of decisions that we have made. We've, as Tracy has, taken the decision to take our buses back under public control from 2027. We're also looking at, as you will know, funding our airport so that we've got international connectivity as well, because right now Sheffield and Doncaster are the two biggest cities in the country and arguably in Europe without a direct rail link to an international airport. So now we need the government to support us, and that's what this plan is about. It's no longer about why, it's no longer about what. We know those answers. It's about how and when. How and when. How and when are we going to get what we need in this region to make rail work for all of us? We have any number of cabinet ministers in the region. They understand it fully too, because they take these trains. We've got the Chancellor in Leeds, we've got John Healey, Ed Miliband, and I know they get this. I absolutely know they understand it. And so that means for us investments in Sheffield and Doncaster stations, unlocking that capacity. It means a new station in Rotherham on the main line. It means Midland Main Line electrification, which we have been promised for years. That's a £14 billion plan outlined in this document. But that unlocks, just over the next 10 years alone, £20 billion of growth. And I know this government, just like we are absolutely, fundamentally committed to growth of our economy, not just in the southeast, but here in the north of this country. And that's why that investment in our rail services that unlocks that growth is so vital. Alongside the human stories, there is the growth potential of this region, which is massive. And so we need to unlock it. And the spending review, the infrastructure strategy are key to that investment. And so that's what we're asking for. That's the timetable we're asking for. And we need to see action. And I just want to say one last comment about devolution, because sometimes we hear the argument that devolution is about separating communities, different standards in different places getting different things. And I think what we're showing here today through the White Rose Agreement more broadly is actually devolution is about us having a voice as a place, as a region, and coming together as mayors, and in time with the Mayor of East Yorkshire as well, to say we are God's own country and we deserve better. So thank you very much everybody for being here today, and we're really proud of this report, and thank you David in particular.
Well, you can see the collaboration that's going on here and the desire to deliver something for government ahead of the spending review, and we've worked really hard to get that in a really mature form. So hopefully you'll give us the time to look at the document that was really hard worked over, so thank you. We've got some questions from journalists, and then I think there's some one-to-ones that others have requested. So in the first instance, Ray from the Yorkshire Post, and if you haven't got your copy of the Yorkshire Post today, you're missing a treat, because it is wrapped in that image, Yorkshire's plan for rail. So Ray, your question.
Thank you. Yeah, two quick questions, if that's okay. Firstly, all of them are speaking about how to do this. From your full discussions with the government you've been talking about, how confident are you backing your plan? And to Lord Blunkett, it's a really great piece of work. We've had a lot of rare reviews in the past that our readers will have read, and they're still waiting for change. How confident are you that our readers will feel the impact of this?
So in the first instance, we've had meetings with government ministers, with Heidi, with Lord Hendy, and I think what they're looking for is a pragmatism and a practicality and a maturity of thinking about what is needed, and the phased way we've approached this, I think, has landed well. But you'll know that we will always ask for more for Yorkshire, because we have been left behind for far too long. So actually, the opportunity is greater than other parts of the country, particularly in London and the South East. Because if growth is the exam question, transport is absolutely the answer. I'll come to Ollie, and then I'll come to you, David Blunkett. Yeah.
I just got Westlife when I'm key change at the moment. Look, great question. I don't think any of us underestimate the sort of financial challenges, the economic challenges facing this government. After 14 years of a broken economy, it's not easy to fix some of these big challenges that we face, because they've been stored up over a huge period of time. But we have had commitments from this government that growth is central, and we agree with that, and growth is absolutely at the forefront of our minds when we think about this rail plan. I think, as Tracy says, Heidi, Lord Hendy have both said, they're absolutely keen to see improvements in Yorkshire. They want to work with us on this plan, and they understand the potential that we have, and none of that is easy, but they are absolutely committed to what we want to achieve together. Just on your second question, if you don't mind as well, because I do think there is a challenge for all of us to communicate to our communities that this is real, that absolutely we can make change happen, and now with a Labour government and Labour mayors, we can absolutely see change, and change happens under Labour, and that's what I think the government needs to communicate here as well. So I think we will see absolutely that change, but we need to see tangible differences on the ground, and that's what we're all pushing for.
Thank you. Lord Blunkett.
Sometimes political change is not just about the public profile, it's also about personal relationships, and we're very fortunate to have Peter Hendy as the rail minister, because he's an expert in rail, and because I was able to work with him on the buses bill, which we take through the House of Lords, I was also able to take his advice on which parts of our report would tick the boxes, because this is about rail and infrastructure, it's about new rolling stock, it's about comfort, it's about reliability and speed, it's about getting goods off the road and onto rail in terms of freight. But it's also about the government's overall agendas, which I mentioned earlier. So his advice was very clear. It's got to be about growth, it's got to be about housing, it's got to be about connecting to those people who feel disconnected and feel that areas have been neglected. And a recent report from the Centre for Cities has demonstrated that if you can make the core magnet cities work better, and they're connected to the smaller towns and villages in a way that allows people to commute for all the things I mentioned earlier, then their lives change as well, and everyone gains. So there's a driving force in terms of that rail link, that rail bus connectivity, that through ticketing, which is going to be part of this structure. And only in that way will people actually seriously feel that a difference is being made. We have a challenge. It's going to take time, and people are impatient, and they don't want time to be taken. So the sooner we can get your transit system off the ground in West Yorkshire, our tram system, Oliver and Tom, extended in Sheffield and South Yorkshire, we can see some very quick hits. And that's why we've not asked for sums of money that simply cannot be delivered. We want to promise that we'll work with government to do something that is deliverable, is timeable, and is feasible. And if we can work with the rail industry and other major businesses, because this is about skills and developing skills across Yorkshire, linking with our universities, with our further education colleges as well, that would be a major outcome. So the White Rose Agreement, and what we're doing with this rail launch, is, as I said, a beginning of getting people to feel that the more they come together, the more they can achieve. It's a no-brainer.
And if I may just add that also Heidi understands the 11 billion that has been spent on Trans-Pennine upgrade, and that will be wasted if these amazing trains moving at speed screech to a halt waiting outside Leeds or screech to a halt waiting outside Manchester. So both the strategies of looking at east to west to free up that opportunity that government have invested in is, as Lord Blunkett says, it's a no-brainer, because otherwise you're just not taking the full advantage of that huge investment that the Trans-Pennine on time, on budget, can deliver, and we can deliver both sides of the Pennines and up to York, Sheffield, and then on to Newcastle and elsewhere.
Yeah, 25% of the delay getting into Leeds this morning was sitting outside the station.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we have Charlie from that team. Hi, Charlie.
Good afternoon. Two quick questions, that's okay. Well, first, what made this plan different to previous proposals for South Yorkshire and Skaith as well? With the expansion onto York, are you confident you'll be able to keep the uptake present into Skaith?
Thanks. You both heard those, okay?
Yeah, sure. Well, hopefully, us will make the difference. Working alongside David Blunkett, clearly, ministers in London who we will work with closely, that's the difference to this one. And I think this report is hugely timely. We have the spending review, the infrastructure strategy coming out in June. Those are the documents, those are the plans that should give Yorkshire the future that we're asking for, that we deserve. So the difference is the timing, the people involved, and frankly the commitment to this plan, and making sure that it isn't just kind of land and sit in a drawer, but absolutely is then delivered on behalf of all of our community. So we have to be that difference, and that's what people should give us a chance to do. And now with 3 mayors working across Yorkshire, seems to be a thought that we will work closely as well, then absolutely I think we can make our voices heard and get on with delivery.
Yeah, that increased capacity we're seeing in York is already happening, obviously with the huge expansion happening around the back of York, the 3,000 homes, the million square foot of office space being built in York Centre as well. That's been our absolute key hub for transport and connectivity in York and North Yorkshire. And the links it creates into other areas is absolutely vital for our people. And then going from York onwards over to Skaith. So improving that capacity then to be able to take that load of people coming in, because we've already seen huge increase in those numbers already. And we want to have that, we want to be able to encourage people to use that, and that having that capacity to be able to take it in York is absolutely vital to it. So that work going onward, which is happening in York already, is absolutely key to be able to take that capacity. But then going on from York as well, I think we often don't touch on that. When we're heading north of York, that's where a lot of charges come in. So being able to improve that connectivity north of York up into the north east is absolutely vital as well. And again, that half of York is actually key to that. So having York Station working better and being able to take that capacity, which we're already seeing now, is absolutely vital, especially with the development work happening at York Central, which over the next 5 or 10 years is going to increase that capacity way more than what we're seeing now. So having that work going on is absolutely key to the entire region, but particularly for us in York and North Yorkshire.
Thank you. And Rob, Northern Gentleman.
Yes, thank you, Tracy. Hello, Mayors and Board Blunkett. The Mayors of Greater Manchester and Liverpool City region were down in London this week making the case for why they needed £17 billion, I think, to build a new railway line between Liverpool and Manchester. To what extent do you think Yorkshire is in competition with mayors from the northwest or other areas for a limited pot of money, because there is ultimately a limited pot of money available? to leave this thing, just as a technical question. The report, which I'm reading, talks about no regrets capacity schemes around Leeds, York and Sheffield. I was quite intrigued by that no regrets phrase. I was wondering what that means.
Okay, David B, would you like to take the...
I'll take the first question, there is capacity for only so many schemes within the envelope that's available at the moment from central government. We all know that. So it's not a competition, but it is a presentation of what can be done within a reasonable timescale in a practical and deliverable fashion. And we wish them well across the Pennines, although we don't really need to, because they sell themselves very well all the time, and they've had a longer history in both Greater Manchester and developing collaboration, and we're working with Steve Rodman in Merseyside. So we know that if we both succeed, we do better together, and that connectivity across the Pennines can only really happen if we get our side of the Pennines with the investment it needs. In other words, they can do whatever they wish in terms of changes in the northwest, but the north as a whole will not flourish and will not generate the jobs, the housing, the future that we need if we don't do it together. Our programme is deliberately designed to fit in with the likely available funds. And I think that makes it both a doable and a realistic prospect. And sometimes in politics, if you ask for the realistic, you get it. And if you ask for the moon, you have to wait while the spacecraft's prepared.
But also, none of us can fall into what could be an easy position, you know, fighting for limited amounts of money. We will not flourish if we set ourselves against each other, and that's why you'll see ahead of UK Reef, the Great North being launched, where mayors committing to work together for the good of the North.
I ought to stress that Andy Burnham was my parliamentary private secretary, then a minister when I was in government, and he remains my friend, so that's why I'm not abused him in any way.
Ollie, you wanted to comment?
Well, just to follow up from that, look, Andy and Steve are our friends and our neighbours, and they do a brilliant job speaking up on behalf of their regions. And actually, when they were down in London talking about their proposals, they weren't just talking about the Liverpool to Manchester Railway, but they were also talking about how that impacts on places on this side of the Pennines too. So the connection between, for instance, Manchester and Sheffield, which we all know is not good enough. Certainly the St Pass is falling down. This is a conversation we're having with Claire Ward, the Mayor of East Midlands as well, and the rail connections between those two great cities are not good enough either. So this is about making sure the whole system works, and we fully support their proposals to try and make their railway work in that bit of the world, but it does have impacts on this side of the Pennines, and certainly we are always going to speak up for our region and say absolutely we need investment too. We need to see the investment in this side of the Pennines and in the schemes that we've laid out in that document, because that also impacts on them as well. So as Tracy said, this is a process, this is a challenge, this is a set of schemes which all fit in together. It's a jigsaw essentially, and that investment needs to come right across the north, and we will speak up for what we need.
If you'd asked about competition with Oxford and Cambridge, that would have been...
Absolutely. I was happy to bash the south, clearly, that's it.
I think just on that, I think that's fundamentally why we're all doing this, because we know there's been lack of investment in the north in general, and it's not about competition, it's about working collectively, but we all see in the north there's been a huge lack of investment, particularly in rail, particularly in infrastructure, forever. And it's not about working in silos, it's about they're doing their thing on that side of the Pennines, we're doing ours, but there's obviously a collective working that what benefits them is going to benefit us and vice versa. But it's that wider picture that I think is where we kind of come from with the Great North, which we'll be seeing next week, as Tracy touched on. It's that wider message, that wider piece of investment in the north, particularly in infrastructure, particularly in rail, is key for all of us, and improvements happen in Manchester, Liverpool, York, Sheffield. It's got to impact all of us in a positive way. So it's collectively speaking, the government on a regular basis cannot keep having investment going on into the south and the southeast. If you want to see economic growth, you want to see the housing being built, you want to see those opportunities, the vast majority going forward is going to have to happen in the north, it's going to happen in our region, and getting that investment, particularly into infrastructure and rail, is going to be key to unlocking all that going forward.
And on the no regrets, it's making decisions that then don't tie your hands in future. So whether that's safeguarded land for HS2, having conversations with government about what can be released for development in this great city of Leeds, and just making sure that things are future-proofed going forward, so we don't make decisions that then tie our hands when we want to make that case for the Northern Powerhouse Rail in full, for example, going forward. But we have our technical team with us if you'd like more detail, I'm sure, unless our fellow mayors, technical experts.
Yes, okay.
Very good.
Just about to say, the phone call coming into me now is just Andy Burnham saying he's still like
Alex from Global.
Afternoon.
Oh, there you are. Hey.
Firstly, to Lord Blunkett, just explain to us why you wanted to get involved in this plan, and second to the whole panel, what could be the biggest hurdles in getting this off the ground? Each different part of Yorkshire poses its own problems, everywhere's different, so what would be the biggest hurdles?
Well, originally I didn't want to, I was black.
Sorry, I was persuasive.
Is the honest truth. The minute it was mentioned to me, I thought, why not? Make the space, make the capacity, you've got experience, why not try and bring it to bear? Firstly, because I love Yorkshire. Secondly, because I knew there was a massive challenge and people are sick of having to put up with inadequacy. Thirdly, because the mayors were up for collaboration, and as I said a minute or two ago, get this off the ground and it's the beginning of a much more long-term, broader process. So it seemed to me that putting in 10 weeks of my life was going to be very worthwhile because they meant it and they're determined to do it.
David, yes, what's going to be difficult for you?
Yeah, I think going forward, obviously, we understand the financial situation that we all find ourselves in, which I think why this report is really key, because it is that phased approach, and as it's been touched on already, we've really linked into how it's going to open up that growth opportunity and those housing numbers particularly as well. So it's rail infrastructure improvement in that, but it's leading to something much greater and bigger than that. So I think the fact we've phased it's very sensible in terms of the amounts that we're asking for. We're going for that phased approach over the period of time, and what it's going to lead to in terms of those economic growth opportunities and the housing numbers, which again I've touched on. That kind of element of what the government wants to achieve is going to have to happen, particularly in the north, and having those foundations that we often talk about now, perhaps, fix the working problem, is going to be the thing that's going to lead to all those other things down the road. So I think having that phased approach combats some of that challenge that we may face.
Okay, Ollie.
Yeah, well, just before I answer the second question, let me just touch on the first, because David's slightly too modest, and it just gives me an opportunity to say thank you again to David for the work that he's put in, not just on the rail review, but David is a huge advocate for Yorkshire and always has been and always will be, and is the very definition of a public servant in my view, and always commits time and energy and effort to making sure, despite the fact he is no longer an MP for Sheffield, he's absolutely an advocate for the whole of Yorkshire, and I am personally, and I know the other mayors are as well, absolutely grateful for the work that he has put in and the commitment that he has shown. So rather than actually focus on what the hurdles look like, I probably want to focus more on what the need is and the frustration and anger from our communities that we've seen certainly this morning, but frankly we've all felt over any number of years, because that is the focus for me, and I think for us, is how do we solve those problems for our communities? And yes, of course there will always be hurdles, but we face hurdles in our jobs every single day. Nothing comes to us that isn't frankly a hurdle, because if it's been solved or it's solvable, it usually doesn't get onto our desks. So yes, there are hurdles, yes, there are challenges. We've already spoken at length about the financial challenges that this government face. Sometimes in our jobs we face technical challenges. There are things that we don't know technically how to do. We aren't in that position here. What we need is that political will to force this through on behalf of our communities, because that anger and frustration is so real, and the potential is so great, the potential for economic growth and unlocking the opportunities of Yorkshire as a whole. So let's focus on what we need to do rather than what we can't do.
Yeah, Lord Blunkett is an absolute legend, and we're so grateful.
Stop it.
The difficulty is going to be to make sure that we get this message across, that now is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for government to turn the tide for Yorkshire, to just show that investment over decades and beyond parliamentary terms, actually, that we're going to make sure that we have in the sort of imminent today, and we have the medium term and the long term plan. We're in it for the long haul, and we're hoping that government are, and also that the public will have patience. That's also going to be challenging. The public They hear us talk about this, but they want to see action on the ground, so that's also going to be a challenge. Now, I know Lord Blunkett has to go in 20 minutes, so we have Spencer from the north, and then we've got some individual one-to-ones, I think. So, Spencer, where are you?
Yes.
Okay, that's the back.
Ambitious documents. I'm just wondering how much of this is a kind of rebadging or rebranding the Northern Powerhouse Rail? Or does it actually go further than that, because there's some smaller schemes like Caxton Station maybe in North Yorkshire? How much is it NPR recycled?
Well, if I may though, it's not NPR recycled, it's what actually needs to be done. So it's those projects that need to be, the problems that need to be solved. So it's not recycling, the problems still exist. David?
I mean, it's a truism that there are programmes and projects that have been on the stocks, have been hope in people's eyes for a very long time. And it's true that projects have been promised and then dropped. So the task was to put this together in a coherent, collaborative way that linked the local and the connectivity within smaller areas to the big picture that's been talked about for decades. And we're trying to turn the failed promises of you're going to get this and you're going to get that, and then they're cancelled again and again. That's been true with electrification. Sheffield's the only major city in the country that's not got an electric train running into it. We've promised it for decades. This time, we're saying, here's a joined up programme, and we want government to back the programme, not just individual projects.
Great, and Ollie?
Well, I want to say, firstly, I'm glad you mentioned the word ambition, because ambition for me is the word that is central to this document. It's about us collectively demonstrating and speaking up about our ambition for this place when it comes to rail and transport more broadly. And we have huge ambitions for our place right across our region, and the rail plan speaks to that ambition. Secondly, on your point around are these just really bad schemes, I think you'd be slightly surprised if we came with a document that had a list of wholly brand new schemes in a T-shaped station, and what on earth would be a surprise, I think, to most people in the room. Not yet. So I do think they are schemes that we have talked about for years. As David says, these are schemes that have been asked for time and time and time again. This is about us collectively saying, this is what this looks like as a whole piece of infrastructure for the whole of Yorkshire, and what the shared commitment is, and why it's important that we support each other as we ask for those schemes. We were just hearing this morning about Platform 17, the big station, and the impact that that has on Sheffield commuters and Doncaster commuters because of the train platform there not being long enough, and the problems that happen at Leeds Station. We can't solve the problems in Sheffield if we don't solve the problems in Leeds and problems in York, and that's why these schemes have to be delivered now, because we've been talking about them for years. Let's get on and sort them.
Super, David.
Yeah, I think it's on that final point. I think that is exactly why we're all frustrated, because some of the schemes you are talking about have been around for a long time and haven't been delivered and haven't had that investment in. We're not doing this because everything is working perfectly. We haven't seen that. That's the frustration. There are some new elements that obviously come through as well. But some of the projects and ideas we're talking about have been around for some time, still haven't been delivered. So having that much more joined up, cohesive approach to it, and having that conversation with government and putting our plans together for that long-term investment is going to make that change, is going to make that difference, I'm sure.
Great stuff. Well, thank you all so much for coming and for being part of this historic moment. Yorkshire coming together, because actually, if you're in West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire or York and North Yorkshire, you probably feel more Yorkshire than South, West or whatever. So this is about us across the north working in collaboration to say to government, we have a pragmatic offer, work with us, phase these developments and make the change that we all know to grow our economy. So thank you all so much for coming. If you'd like to interview David, Lord Blunkett, he has to get off soonish, so maybe we can prioritise that going forward. But thank you all again for coming. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.